Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are really opening up some fascinating sources. They challenge how we usually think about that internal battle.
Mm.
You know, the one every leader, every professional faces daily. This dynamic tension between fear and faith.
Mm-hmm.
We're drawing a lot today from material rooted in, well, Christian and biblical leadership ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And our mission, I think, is pretty clear. We want to figure out what real courage looks like. Not being fearless, right?
Right.
But using this other force, faith, to take that genuine, sometimes paralyzing fear and somehow turn it into decisive action.
Yeah.
That's the gap, isn't it, between getting stuck and actually breaking through.
It really is. And what's so interesting here is how these sources seem to reposition fear itself. We tend to think of fear as the bad guy, the thing to crush or ignore.
Definitely.
But this material, it suggests fear might actually be, well, necessary, almost a prerequisite for courage. That moment of peak fear could be the very doorway to a breakthrough.
What?
If we get the difference between just reacting out of fear versus acting with faith despite the fear.
Okay, that distinction.
Yeah.
That feels huge. So here's the plan for you listening. We'll quickly look at where fear comes from biologically and maybe spiritually. Then check out some classic examples from the Bible figures who faced, frankly, terrifying situations.
Big ones.
And then bring it home. How do these old principles work in today's world? Boardrooms, not battlefields.
Right. The pressure points now.
And finally, we promise a practical tool for you, something called the fear versus faith audit. Sound good. Let's jump into the anatomy of fear first.
Okay. So fear works on really two deeper levels that connect. First, there's the primal stuff, the biology, what the sources call the primal scream.
Okay.
That's your fight or flight response, right? Adrenaline floods in, heart pounds. It's a brilliant survival tool, honestly. Hardwired in our DNA to warn us about real physical danger. It's a warning system.
But like you said, we're not usually running from saber-toothed tigers anymore.
Exactly. Mostly gone, those.
In our professional lives, the threats feel different, more psychological, emotional, financial.
We fear losing our job, a big project failing, getting slammed publicly, or just rejection by peers.
Yeah, being pushed out.
And these things, they're invisible, intangible mostly, but they hijack the mind in the same way, triggering that same fight or flight that can just freeze you or make you make bad, hasty choices.
And this is where that spiritual angle comes in, isn't it? It adds a layer that maybe psychology alone doesn't quite capture. It's pretty striking that the very first time fear is mentioned in the Bible, Genesis 3, Adam says, I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. That hiding. It wasn't just about being physically exposed, was it?
No, the sources suggest it runs deeper. It's about fear of judgment, exposure, that core shame of inadequacy.
Feeling separated from God.
That's the context we need, I think. That fear of inadequacy, if you follow this thinking, is like this gap that opened up way back. And the goal of that kind of deep, pervasive fear, it's paralysis. The source material talks about the enemy, whether that's internal self-talk or external pressures, actively using that vulnerability, whispering doubts, blowing worries out of proportion. The aim is to keep you stuck. A fearful person is a paralyzed person, unable to reach their potential.
Okay, but we need to be clear, right? We're not saying all fear is bad.
Absolutely not. Prudence, healthy caution, that's smart. That's what makes you check the budget twice, look both ways before crossing the street.
Good fear.
Good fear, exactly. We're focusing on the crippling kind, the anxiety, the worry, that just hangs around, often way bigger than the actual threat, the kind that stops us from embracing what the sources call the adventure of faith.
Meaning, the chances for growth, for doing something meaningful.
Precisely. The opportunities God puts in front of us.
Okay, so we've identified the enemy, this pervasive, paralyzing fear, often rooted in feeling inadequate. So that leads us right to the core idea that flips the script. Say it again.
Courage is not the absence of fear,
Right.
but it is faith overcoming fear.
Okay, explain that difference.
Yeah.
Because the world seems to define courage differently.
It does. The world often points to, the big heroic acts, the person who seems totally unfazed, fearless.
The action hero.
Kind of, yeah. But biblical courage, as presented here, is more internal, accessible. It's not about having some innate brave personality or putting on a show.
Okay.
It's about inner resolve, a conviction, really, a spiritual commitment. And that commitment fuels action even when your body, the circumstances, your own thoughts are screaming, retreat.
Okay, but that sounds hard. Like really hard. If I'm facing, say, a potential hostile takeover or my division's numbers are just tanking, my body is screaming retreat, how does that internal resolve become practical? tangible.
Yeah.
It feels easy to say Joshua was courageous looking back, but facing my quarterly review feels pretty daunting now. How is it a level playing field for me?
That's a fair question. It feels practical because faith isn't passive here. It's described as an active engine.
Right.
The main thing required seems to be disciplined attention. Where you put your focus, fear locks your gaze onto the problem, the potential disaster. What if I fail? What if I lose it all?
Right, the downward spiral.
Exactly. Faith, on the other hand, deliberately redirects that focus. It points you towards a bigger reality, towards God's character and power. It asks a different question. What if God shows up here? What truth can I hold on to right now?
Okay. So faith provides an anchor.
Right.
That makes sense. You hold on to specific promises like I will be with you or my grace is sufficient.
Yes, that's the anchor. And actively clinging to those promises, cultivating trust. That's the third piece. Trusting in God's goodness, his capability. It doesn't make the bad quarter disappear. The difficult meeting still has to happen.
Right, the problem's still real.
The problem's real. But trusting eliminates the panic and the despair that the problem wants to trigger. It changes your internal state.
Got it. So let's see how this worked under extreme pressure. You mentioned historical blueprints.
Yeah, let's look at some biblical figures who clearly felt intense, very understandable fear, but acted anyway. Take Joshua. He steps into Moses' massive shoes, right? Leading this often difficult nation.
And rebellious, yeah.
Against enemies who were dug in, formidable, literally described as giants in fortified cities. Imagine that job description.
And horrifying.
Absolutely. And the proof of his fear, it's right there in the text. God himself tells him repeatedly in chapter 1, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged.
He says it multiple times.
3 times. The sources point out God wouldn't need to keep saying it if Joshua wasn't genuinely feeling the fear.
Good point.
So his action crossing the Jordan River, that bizarre strategy at Jericho, it wasn't fearlessness, it was obedience. Driven by faith that God was with him, overriding his tactical fear.
Okay, then David and Goliath, that's the classic underdog story.
It is. But look closer. The entire Israelite army-trained warriors were dismayed and terrified for 40 days straight.
Right. Paralyzed by fear.
Totally. And David, he's just a shepherd kid. He wasn't being reckless, though. He saw the giant. He knew the physical risk.
So what was different?
What's key, according to the sources, is that his personal fear, the fear of getting crushed, was actually smaller than another fear he had.
Which was?
The fear of God's name being insulted, dishonored by this Philistine taunting everyone. That fear was bigger.
A reordering of fears.
Exactly. And his confidence came from experience. He reasoned. The same God who saved me from the lion and the bear when I was protecting sheep. Surely he can handle this bigger threat. His action, the sling, the stone, wasn't driven by lack of fear, but by a faith that trumped rational fear based on God's track record.
That makes sense. Experience builds faith.
It does. And then there's Queen Esther, a totally different kind of courage. Not battlefield bravery, but political, quiet courage.
Yeah, her situation was intense.
Their challenge was court rules. Approaching the king without being summoned, that was potentially a death sentence. Period.
High stakes.
Extremely. But her people face annihilation. So she makes that incredible statement. And if I perish, I perish.
Chilling, almost.
It is. But it's not macho talk. It's a clear-eyed look at the real danger she could die combined with this absolute trust in God's bigger plan. Her courage was strategic, prepared, and act of faith.
Wow. Okay, these are powerful examples, but how do we, bridge the gap? How do these ancient stories connect to the pressures we face today in business, in our careers?
Yep.
We need more than just inspiration, right?
Absolutely. Let's get practical. Think about making a really difficult, maybe ethically charged decision at work. Let's say you're a manager, you discover a major flaw in a product that's already shipped, or maybe ethical problem deep in your supply chain.
Oh boy.
The kind of thing that could just wreck the quarter's profits if it comes out.
The fear hits instantly. Fear of failure, financial loss, maybe shareholder anger.
Exactly. And the normal reaction driven by that fear is often what? Cover up, delay, spin it, minimize.
Yeah, damage control mode.
But a leader operating from faith, according to these principles, approaches it differently. Step 1 is seeking wisdom, not just legal advice, but divine guidance, maybe trusted counsel.
Okay.
Then, prioritizing integrity and justice over the immediate bottom line. That might mean admitting the mistake, taking the financial hit, fixing the core problem.
That takes guts.
It does. Because it requires trusting in God's sovereignty, like Proverbs says. Victory belongs to the Lord, regardless of our horses and chariots, our resources. And this commitment to ethics, it can actually lead to what some call ethical innovation.
Ethical innovation. What's that?
It just means that because you're not frozen by fear of loss, you can pivot quicker. Instead of wasting energy on cover-ups, you're already working on the better, safer, more ethical solution. And often, customers reward that transparency massively in the long run.
That flips the script on risk. It links directly to facing opposition too, doesn't it? Or ethical dilemmas where doing the right thing feels like career suicide.
Definitely. The fear there is often about isolation, retaliation, losing influence, losing that big client if you refuse to cut corners.
Wanting people's approval.
That's huge, isn't it? The desire for human approval?
Yeah.
The faith response demands anchoring your worth in God's approval, not people's. Recalling verses like Galatians 1:10. Am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God?
Ouch. That one stings.
It can, but it's liberating. Trusting God as your ultimate provider frees you to say no to the shady deal, even if it hurts financially in the short term.
Okay, but we need a crucial distinction here, right? This isn't about being reckless.
Absolutely critical distinction. Faith-driven courage is not recklessness, not even close. Courage involves strategic thinking, prayerful consideration, prudent preparation. Look back. Joshua sent spies first. Esther planned her approach meticulously. They did their homework.
Right, they didn't just jump blindly.
No. Recklessness ignores facts, ignores wisdom, acts impulsively, maybe out of pride, and tries to label it faith. Real faith confronts reality, the scary data, the giant, the protocol with God's presence, doesn't pretend the danger isn't there.
It's about wise stewardship, not just testing God.
Exactly. Diligent preparation plus active trust. That's the effective combination.
Okay, this is making sense. So now let's shift from the what and why to the how. You mentioned a practical tool, the fear versus faith audit. Let's give that to our listeners now, something they can actually use.
Yes, this is designed to take it from theory to practice, right now. And remember, the goal isn't to magically eliminate fear. That's probably impossible, maybe even undesirable.
Right. Fear can be a signal.
It can. The goal is to identify it specifically so you can counter it strategically with truth.
Okay, step one.
Step one, identify the specific fear. Get granular. Vague stuff like, I'm scared I'll fail, isn't helpful. You can't fight fog. You need specifics like, I'm afraid my new business venture will fail, leading to bankruptcy and disappointing everyone who believed in me. Sharp focus.
Okay, that feels more concrete. Step two, probe deeper. Find the core concern. Ask why. Like a detective. Why does the thought of business failure scare you so much? Maybe it's loss of money. Why fear that? Leads to feeling inadequate. Or fear of lacking provision. Or maybe deep down it's a fear that God won't be there. Or disapprove.
You have to dig until you hit that bedrock lie that's fueling the surface fear.
Got it. Find the root. Then step three, script God's promises. This is the counterattack. Once you know the core lie, you find specific biblical truth to demolish it. If the root is inadequacy, I'm not smart enough, good enough for this, you counter with truth. Philippians 4:13, I can do all this through him who gives me strength. Or 2 Corinthians 12:9, my power is made perfect in weakness.
Exactly. If it's provision, maybe Philippians 4:1, my God will meet all your needs, you replace the destructive internal script with God's actual script.
Okay, replace the lie with truth. What's step four?
Step 4 is internalizing that truth. Don't just find the verse. Own it. Memorize it. Pray it back to God. Speak it out loud when the fear starts creeping back in. This is about actively choosing where you put your mental focus. Disciplined attention again.
Right, making it real for yourself.
Yeah.
And the final step.
Step 5. Take a step of faith. Based on the truth you've just anchored yourself to, identify one small, concrete action you can take now to move forward. If fear has you avoiding a tough conversation, maybe the step is just scheduling that meeting now. If it's financial fear, maybe the step is sitting down and creating that honest budget you've been putting off.
Small steps.
Small, tangible steps of obedience. Each one builds spiritual muscle, chips away at fear's power.
That's really practical.
Yeah.
Okay, zooming out as we wrap up, living this way, anchored in faith over fear, it really does create a different kind of presence in the world, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It's countercultural, especially now with so much instability, economic, political. When leaders model this kind of steady faith despite real fears, it does more than just build their own resilience. It injects hope. it can genuinely change workplaces through ethical leadership.
It builds a different kind of legacy.
Exactly. A legacy of courage, not based on denying fear, but on overcoming it through something greater, purposeful action from deep conviction.
Which leads us to maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. One source essentially asks, what part of your legacy, your potential impact, is currently being held hostage because you keep letting fear have the deciding vote?
That's the question. Because courage is a choice. It's an active partnership with God, using the faith he gives, forged right there in the heat of your fears. So we'd really encourage you, try that audit. Engage with it. See what happens when you choose that step of obedience over avoidance. You might just find fear turning into fuel for real growth and lasting purpose.